6 till 7:30. Work sessions are an opportunity for board members to discuss issues informally with staff and invited guests. The board encourages members of the public to attend work sessions and listen to the discussion. There are generally no opportunity for public comment. However, tonight we will allow limited public comment. Please keep your comments under 3 minutes, and if possible, please avoid repeating the same comments. So we're going to have a staff presentation on homelessness, the survey result, and then we'll have a board discussion.
Okay. So as everyone knows, prior to the end of the calendar year, we had brought forward the policy that is before each of you that was initially drafted in response to the creation of a homelessness fund. So what we're trying to figure out is how this fund would be funded and who would be eligible to use the funds. So at the time when we brought this policy before the board, it was the end of the calendar year, so 2 board members were going to be exiting, and so we were given direction to postpone until the new board started. And then we were also told that it would be good to get community feedback and, if possible, to conduct a survey. So that's what we've done. And so of the survey that we had done, we posted it at the end of November, and it ran through January 31st, and we had a total of 743 responses. So there were 10 questions that were asked, and of those 10 questions, the first one was, are you now or have you ever been homeless? 82% or 609 people responded that no, they have not, and almost 2.5% responded that they currently are homeless, with the other 15.4 responding that they have been at some point in their life. The next question asked was, do you believe that it is the government's job to provide aid to homeless citizens? And 67, almost 68% responded yes, and then 32% responded no. This question 3, was a multi-answer question, and so it was to check any that apply. And so of the choices, drug and alcohol abuse was marked by 672 of the 742 respondents. So that one was, along with mental health issues, those 2 were the highest reasons as to why people felt people were homeless. And then there's a variety of other ones, such as 66% being the cost of living, 51% being personal choice, almost 44% being a way to escape domestic violence, and 44% also due to financial crisis. So there was another question, or there was a bottom response that said other and please specify. And when we were reviewing those responses, a lot of them were the same things, just people kind of put their own spin on it. Some not nice, some different. But a lot of it, a couple of them said physical handicap issues or handicap challenges. Some said coming out of foster care without adequate tools to be able to fend for themselves in a home. Some people just marked all of the above, and then there were several that just kind of said the system is broken. Question 4 was, do you believe that there are a sufficient amount of resources available to homeless individuals in your county? And almost 68%, or 494 of the respondents, said no, and then the other 32% said yes. Question 5, if you suddenly found yourself in a situation where you had no source of income for 2 months straight, would you have enough money to satisfy all of your personal expenses and needs? 63% almost said yes, and then 37% said no. Question 6 was also a multi-answer question, and what is the best way to help homeless individuals in your community? And again, since this was multi-answer, people were able to select multiple reasons. they were able to select other, which again kind of fell into the same sort of category as to all encompassing all of the above. The highest reason being for almost 47% being to help them find the resources that they need. Question 7, did you ever take advantage of resources in your community available to assist homeless individuals? And 85% said no, 15% saying yes. And this doesn't necessarily mean that the people who took advantage of those resources were homeless. Question 8. If the county provided funding to support housing for the homeless, what type would you be supportive of? The most supported at almost 55% was the transitional housing. And then the permanent supportive housing and homeless shelters were pretty close, 42.6 and 45.1%. Question 9, what funding stream would you support using to build homeless housing? The highest selected, almost 68%, was the county portion of foreclosed land sales, 32% construction excise tax, and 26% being property tax timber revenues, which would be general fund support. And then the other selection of that was approximately 38%. There was a variety of ideas. Some said all of the above, some said a hotel tax, some said to a tax that applies to broader population than property owners. Some said nothing. Several said a bond measure, which is a coming question. And then there were also several that had said a corporate tax. And then the final question was, are you supportive of a bond to address financing of affordable housing? And this was really close to a 50-50 split, with 51.4 saying yes and 48.5 saying no. And then some feedback that I got was that, that it's something that they might be supportive of if they knew the amount that the bond would be. So the next steps that we have, and that's kind of why we're here, there's no decisions to be made tonight. It's just kind of furthering the discussion so that we can kind of figure out what direction the board would like staff to go. And so our questions to you are, based on this information, where would the board like to see the resources for the fund come from? And where would the board like to see the funds spent? So we've gotten some of the responses as to those who took the survey, where they would like to see the funds come from, and then also, to a certain extent, where they would like to see them spent. And then we had some additional questions. Depending on the projects that are funded, what would the application process be? Who would review the applications? And what would the evaluation criteria be? And so now, before we take any public comment or before we have board discussion, one of the options that was mentioned was the foreclosed land sales. And so I asked Suzanne Johnson, our assessor, to please give us a synopsis of, over the last 5 years, if we were to use foreclosed land sales, what that amount would look like. And so Suzanne, if you want to come up and...
Careful of your shins. Pardon me, careful of your shins. Okay. All right, so this is kind of an awkward thing because foreclosed land sales require us to be taking someone's property for not payment of taxes and making them homeless to take their money so we could use it on homelessness. So it's a little...
It's kind of like the marijuana tax.
Yeah.
Tax marijuana to use to prevent.
Yeah. I don't know. It's kind of an interesting thing. But anyway, Over the last 5 years, starting in 2013-14, the total tax foreclosed revenue was $1,018,000. So
Over how many years?
5.
5 years.
So 1,018,788.63. And that's before any of the expenses. So of course, there's expenses associated with it, hiring our attorney, cleaning up messes, whatever we had to do besides. And that total was $223,000. So the total distribution for 5 years was $808,000.
Is that after collecting the back taxes?
So that includes, we usually, generally, don't advise you to sell the property for less than the taxes. So this would include that amount of money and anything over that. So based on the distribution.
Can you pull the mic closer to you? Sorry.
Based on the distribution that we use to distribute this money, the county's portion of that $808,000 is only $97,000.
Excuse me?
$97,587.
Oh, what
So
the taxes are
Clatsop
paid in the-
County,
Oh.
yes.
Yeah, so that, of that 808,000, we then have to turn it over to all those jurisdictions that have been missing out on the property taxes collected. So our portion was 97,000.
And then I have the rural law. I just did the county districts for sake of conversation, but the rural law was 15,000, road district 1, 21,000, and then the 4-H gets 3,000. So, keeping in mind that we do distribute to every taxing district. So the schools get part of it, the rural fire districts, everyone. But our portion is 97,000.
So that was an average over the 5 years, correct?
Not an average.
Oh,
That's
just
the
the total.
actual number.
So, yeah, I'm sorry. So were there any years that were significantly high that kind of threw that out there, or were there any years that were significantly low? So as far as a steady funding stream? No.
No, it's not steady. So in 2015, we didn't distribute anything. Our costs outweighed what we had in our net. And, well, that's really it. Last year, in 2017, we had 600,000, but we sold, some higher-end properties. And this year, we're getting ready to do our land sale, and you've heard some discussion about what we foreclosed on this year so far. And in this case, our expenses are highly likely to exceed what we take in the money. So there's just too many messy properties with too many problems that cost a lot of money to remedy. So anyway, that's
Thank you.
my.
What did I ask?
Yeah.
So, the last couple of years, we've exchanged some property that was foreclosed in order to help other agencies address the homeless issue. Does that affect this kind of bottom line, or?
Yes.
Do we have any, probably don't have any data on when that transaction takes place, what other savings do we have? Because if another agency can use this property, how many people do they house with that property? And so, it's
Yeah,
not,
it is.
1 + 2 = 3.
And the thinking out of the box, I shared with you before that this is new for me because I was like, oh, we got to get the revenue. But this kind of trading this property is just brilliant in my mind. What we did with, I see Amy's here, what we did with that agate property is amazing, and such a good thing for the community. What we did with the Alderbrook property, if you remember, we turned that one over, and, we could do that. There's my friend over there, too. And that one, now it's back on the tax rolls because they were able to sell it, and the people, just letting the people that bought it are really excited to have it, and they feel like they're going to do something good with that, too. They feel like they got a treasure. So that was a win. They cleaned it up, and And we asked them to pay the senior deferral. If you remember, we have these properties that have the deferred property taxes that the state pays on their behalf, and then we have to pay back the state if we get it in foreclosure. And that was the issue with Alderbrook and with, not Agate, but Madsen up on Floral. And if you have a chance to drive by that house, oh my goodness, I can't wait. He's about ready to give us the tour of what happened with that house. And, pardon me?
Call me, I want to
Okay, I know, it's like amazing. So we are doing some really good things that, you know, while it wouldn't benefit homelessness, you know, in the way that we're looking at it tonight, we're certainly making a difference in our community.
In the instance of the Floral House and also the property down in Seaside, while the people weren't homeless, he used those properties in kind of a unique way to address his workforce housing
Right.
issue. And so he ended up.
That was his reason
yeah.
for buying them,
And-
is he
And his employees were the ones who put in the,
sweat labor, and then he will offer them, you know, the housing or to buy them back from him. So he's an amazing person, too.
I think there are some amazing things going on with housing. I don't know if this is the right place or not, but I connected with somebody I've worked with in a couple of years, it's out of Tacoma, and they do shared housing and do a couple other programs. And so I'm wondering if, as we look at this plan and keep thinking outside the box, that there may be foreclosed properties that, in the right situation, would help alleviate this problem if someone else is going to, I mean, I know the county can't do all the work, but there's other agencies and stuff out there that's willing. So.
And I'm glad you said in the right situation, because there's some coming up that just are not the right situation. They just are not going to work for something to trade or to whatever, you know. So we have to keep that in mind, that not everything that we are foreclosing on is going to be a good property for something like this.
Well, I'm sure encouraged to hear that you've been creative and you're looking for these type of solutions in the past, even without this in place. And certainly I hope that that would be encouraged in the future. I kind of share the same feeling. If you're foreclosing on property and then you're putting it in a homeless fund, you know, what kind of message are you really sending? I like the idea of what you've done already, and you've got people like Elaine from CCA and Alan, and they've already come to received funds from the county commission prior to this as well, correct?
well, the situation with CCA is we turned the house over to them, and so then they were able to then turn around and sell the house because it wasn't really something that they were in the market to own or operate, but then them selling it, they were able to take those funds and be able to help more people.
So this is really wonderful work, and I love this survey. Do we have any way of deciding, is it unduplicated? I mean, was there a control so people could only answer it once?
What? Oh.
From one computer, you were not able to answer it again. Now, I don't know, they could maybe potentially go to another computer, but I tried it myself just to see, I had that question, and it says we've already taken this survey.
Okay, so that points to the validity of the data. And so if we look at the survey, so that gives a snapshot of a part of the community. Because remember, in Portland, they had this thing, if you survey 500 people, that's enough to get a representative sample for the whole community.
400 is usually the figure
Well,
for most surveys.
Barbara Clark said 500, so she was the, 400 to 500. In either case, you've gone beyond that. So that gives us comfort that we have some reliable data about a snapshot of community opinions. But when we look at long-term, big picture, what's the need and what are the kind of availability of the various sources of supply, so that when we do a policy, we're doing it taking into account what's the reality now, and then what do we anticipate going forward. I don't know how we do that. It's so complicated, because we've had some low-hanging fruit, and we've had some people who put in excellent work to get those brought into, you know, kind of jewel shape. What can we anticipate? Do you have any way to project?
Well, and
Really not.
some of the, you know, in the survey on question 9, we had asked what funding stream would you support? And in particular, the construction excise tax was on there, and then it was also mentioned in the other. And that has been a controversial one in the past. And that would only be for the unincorporated areas. And so the amount of that would be less because there isn't as much development in the unincorporated areas. And then if you recall, the Tillamook County, when they were doing their housing study, they tried to implement the construction excise tax, and then it ended up getting recalled. So while there's people that support it, there's also, you know,
There's a strong pushback against it. And the argument that the folks in Cannon Beach made that seemed compelling to me was, why punish the people who are solving the problem? It's kind of like, you know, taking housing away from people who are going to be homeless. Well, what's a more productive way to do it? So we could do a beer tax, but I don't think it would work.
yeah, we can't tax alcohol. OLCC would probably.
I see this as, we might have to look at more than one funding stream. And we can't solve all of this. We can only be partly part of the solution. And I think the commission has the will to do this. But as far as having something that is stable, I can't see how we're going to have something that is stable unless we dedicate some portion of the general fund, or we do a bond. This, for foreclosed properties, that could be partial. And I think the way to maximize whatever we do decide on as far as funding is to give that to agencies that can leverage it so that they can receive grants, and that will maximize the amount of money that goes out into the county.
So would a better question, rather than starting with how you're going to fund it, would a better question to start with be, what is it that you're looking to fund as to the permanent supportive housing, the transitional housing, or the warming shelters?
To me, that's the issue.
Yeah.
I think we're coming at this backwards. We're in the middle of a housing study, which I assume has some component in it addressing homelessness, or?
It doesn't address
anything
homelessness,
like-
it addresses the housing stock. So if you look at it from the perception of not enough housing that drives the cost of living, that then drives people out, it would look at it from that respect, but it does not look at the homeless population in the study.
Yeah, I was very uncomfortable when the board agreed to do this. I wasn't a member of the board at the time, and I thought it was, as I say, I think it was not offering a solution. It was an idea that I didn't think was very well thought out. But, and it's really discouraging to hear what our county assessor thinks of long-term steady viability. And I also think that there are other questions about county-owned land in general and how we manage it. So I'm a little skeptical about the whole enterprise, I have to admit.
What's so interesting, do you have ideas about how to refine it or make it better or approach it differently?
I thought that the whole idea was just, let's create a homelessness fund. Well, how and for what end?
Yeah.
So to me, I think it's an empty policy.
Do you think there's a way to fill it out?
I really
got-
don't, because I think
okay.
that homelessness is an issue that is it's a part of the chronic mental health and housing issues in general that we face. And so to me, I'm looking for a more comprehensive approach that says this is, at any given moment, this is our homeless population. I have to tell you that as someone who has spent a good deal of my life doing surveys, I think the survey is completely invalid. It was a I've spoken with Monica about this before. I don't mean to disparage the work that the county has done, but there are standards to surveys, and this doesn't meet any of them. A lot of people who self-selected, self-reporting surveys are always questionable because it's not really a slice of the population. It's a very small part of the population that has access to a computer that, responds to things. It's not. And I think that combining "have you ever been homeless" with citizen opinions about what resources are likely to be spent are just, that's something one should never do in a survey. And so, but I think that regardless of that, we all agree that homelessness is a real issue in our community. And it's a comprehensive issue.
Can I ask a remedial question just about, in the past, have we had anything barring the city commission to give, if there's a special project that Helping Hands is doing, or has there been anything that's kept the county commission from giving to that?
So we did give to Helping Hands at the end of last fiscal year. And we do have the contributions to outside agencies, and those funds are, the applications for those funds are received by the Human Services Advisory Council, and then those recommendations from that council are brought before the board. There are criteria that limit the type of entities that can apply for them. It's more towards like prevention and health. Helping Hands, for instance, has received some of that funds in the past, but I think that was more focused around their programming that they have, not necessarily about providing housing. So we do have that fund of contributions to outside agencies that, you could expand the criteria for that.
That's exactly what I was thinking. They're used to doing this, and they could have a component of where some of this money goes to homelessness, and that could be funded separately from prevention programs. So,
And those are general fund monies, those ones.
that's right. And so,
You mean all of
The contributions to outside agencies comes from general fund money,
all of
yes.
I've been really uncomfortable with that, and I have real reservations about using general fund dollars for that, and I think it's an inappropriate delegation of our authority. I think we as a board should be looking at all of those and not delegating. I mean, you and I disagree pretty strongly on that one.
yeah.
I have great respect for the programs and great respect, former Commissioner Mushin is part of that, great respect for him. I just think it's a bad public policy.
But it
So
works.
I'd rather see us as a board do a comprehensive look at this. I really appreciate you bringing this to us early so we can consider together on the basis of our individual and shared experience, how do we want to deal with this real issue? I mean, I wonder, are we able to listen to folks in the audience? Are you willing to
Yeah.
do that, Madam Chair?
Yes.
Do you want to, if somebody from the public wants to come forward and speak, we're just asking that you keep it limited to 3 minutes. And Commissioner, thank you.
Pastor Bill can't speak for only 3 minutes. He's
No.
used to 20 minutes.
I bet he can.
Have you seen that meme on Facebook that said, Pastor, you've been seen preaching for 45 minutes in a 25-minute zone? Okay. I'm Pastor Bill Van Nostrand, and I pastor the First Presbyterian Church here in Astoria. First, I want to congratulate you for taking this issue on and treating it as serious. Second, I'm one of the ones who responded that I don't think it's the job of government to pay for something like this. But what I do think the job of government is to create the environment to raise the specter of this issue to a level of legitimacy so that the whole community will see that we're serious. I hope you will also be serious. We know that there are committed people in the business community, in the nonprofit sector as well, and we just want to support them and be a catalyst to see to it that efforts like theirs get off the ground. In my humble opinion, the City of Astoria's Homelessness Solutions Task Force never established that homelessness was a legitimate concern that needed to be addressed. Rather, it was an enforcement issue that if we could just make it unattractive to be homeless in the area, perhaps the problem would go away. So rather than thinking about creating a revenue stream or compromising the general budget, what I would encourage you to start with is something like a proclamation a la Clackamas County that says, we are unequivocally convinced that for a variety of reasons, the threats of the economy, the escalating costs of living, the lack of affordable housing stock, dumb luck, mental health, substance abuse, all of the above, we are significantly concerned that this problem exists. Therefore, be it known that we want to act as a awareness building and encouraging body to enable people within our community to go forward with our blessing, and maybe Oregon Measure 102 commit the bonding authority of municipalities to create funds enough for worthwhile nonprofits to administer efforts and the funding is out there. Former President Obama, as a portion of the bank rescue effort, required that major commercial banks establish what are called community improvement funds or Community Reinvestment Act funds. And so they have to set aside a portion of their reserves and make it available. This is a little known fact because they don't advertise that we want to give this money away, but there are sources out there. If the county professed its political will that we really think this is a legitimate problem, we're not as concerned about the reasons that people find themselves in this situation, but we want to act as a catalyst to make sure that solutions are aired and pursued. I think that would be the place to start.
So I have seen your proclamation from Clackamas County, I believe. Did you give that to former county manager Moore? I feel like I've seen it
I think he
someplace.
passed it
So,
out.
I
yeah,
passed it to
okay.
former executive Moore.
Okay.
And then, actually, I think I received it from some other concerned individuals in the area.
Okay.
And I just tried to be a conduit,
I
that's
think I
right.
might see those individuals.
Yeah.
Yeah, I might see those individuals here myself.
The other thing I wanted to share is the Planning Community Development Director, Gail Henriksen, and I today had a meeting in regards to the U.S. Census Bureau. And when you're talking about the funding, the point that she kept trying to make to us, because they're going to be starting to to start that census process is making sure that we are getting everybody in the county accounted for, because that has a serious impact on our funding streams. And so we may be reaching out to you because we'll be looking for.
And I assure you that there are people in the community who have a heart for this. And there are people with resources in the community who have a heart for this. And so taking upon yourself the entire financial responsibility is not what is necessary.
I don't think that was a consideration.
Okay, but I don't want you to walk away from this table thinking, oh, worra, everybody thinks government needs to take care of things. That's not it. The good people of First Presbyterian Church have cobbled together $440,000 of their own money outside of the annual church budget for the sole purpose of buying a commercial property that is derelict in the city and reclaim the 50 studio apartments that have been vacant for 40 or 50 years and make them available as workforce housing. There are people with the will and the finances ready to help you if the message sent by our government officials was, this is a legitimate problem and we all want to get into the trenches and figure out solutions together.
I'm sold. So, no, that's great. I appreciate it.
Well, I walked away from the Homelessness Solutions Task Force, and it's in the paper, because I claimed in the meeting very vehemently that there are smarter people than we are all throughout the country who can't figure out the cause of homelessness. So let's not try to recreate the wheel. Let's instead try to identify a couple of things that we can do and do it. And they said, oh, you can't talk to the police chief that way.
Well, I hear what you're saying. If I can bring this back to what I had brought out earlier, since you're a pastor of a church, this shared housing services, Mark Merrill is the executive director. They've been in business for about 11 years. And one of the examples of what they do is home sharing. So we, here in Astoria, we have these large Victorian homes that during World War II, some of them were boarding houses. People took in people into their homes, people at the base or whatever. And so there's room. And one of the examples, and when I'm looking at you, one of the examples when I was talking to Mark was, if you look at churches, maybe of the churches you have in your area, there are 400 people in those churches. They may have an extra room that could get matched with someone. That's 400 people that had been homeless that now have a place to stay. And if they're paying rent, the senior that may be having trouble paying the taxes now has another source of income. And on their website, they have stories about this. And so what I want to do, after I was just talking to Mark yesterday, is I would like us to convene folks that are interested in this issue, and maybe have Mark come down and talk to us. I talked to Elaine this morning also, or this afternoon, and I'm going to anyways, there are a lot of people that are interested in this thing. And what is it that we can do, as you say, as a government entity that says, hey, we believe in this.
Right.
Let's bring it together, let's talk about it.
We want to be a
Even just
catalyst.
providing this room as a place where people can get together and talk and start ticking off the things that can be done right now.
Yeah.
I know that in my neighborhood, one of my neighbors is having trouble paying the taxes. She now has a roomer there, and that person is no longer homeless, and she's got a little income. And that can happen right now. Of course, there are, and we would have to know from him how they set this up. And I don't think this program that I'm recommending people look at is something that the county can take on.
No.
But it's an idea in a footprint that maybe other people can look at and maybe together as a community or even regionally we can make something like that happen in our area.
Thanks for letting me speak. I still want Elaine and Amy to be able to do what they do, but the target audience for this project in the derelict was those dishwashers and wait staff that work in the downtown corridor and can't afford to live here.
That's right.
You know, that would take care of the, that would be one of the things that we need to talk about regarding parking as well. The reason that people need to drive their cars to work is because no one can afford to live here anymore. And so perhaps if we were to create studio apartments or
SROs.
or home sharing opportunities, then even the good people who have homes or who have wages but can't afford homes could get off the street. And then, you know, let's let Amy and Elaine make partnerships with those people who have mental health concerns and substance abuse, and get Alan in here on substance abuse, et cetera. But let's first take that big swath out of all those people who have wages and have to live outdoors because they can't afford a home.
Well, we have industries here that can't run at full capacity because they can't get enough workers
Yeah.
that have a place to stay. So, I mean, it's a
I was hoping if we
multi-level
got closer with the owner, I could go to the downtown association and say, hey, you know, partner with us. We may be able to give temporary housing to, you know, 8 or 10 of your dishwashers, and maybe you could be at full staff, and see what they would say to that. Yeah, I think there is the will, and I don't think it's the 100% responsibility of the government agency, but without your support, without your acknowledgement of what a serious issue this is, and you sending to the paper that, you know, the county recognizes that for whatever reason, this is a problem that needs addressing, and we want to be partners with folks in town to do it. Until that legitimacy is established, people are not going to come out for it. And I think the city of Astoria needs to be on notice that they've missed several opportunities to establish the legitimacy of this issue. You know, how
I think I understand you have a
People-
disagreement with him, but
Yeah.
I've sat on that committee for a while, and I know everybody on that committee have in their hearts that they want to help, and they've been working hard. And it's just, you know, like had a conversation with somebody, there's oftentimes more than one right, you know, and I hear totally what you're saying.
Yeah.
And, but I don't want to slam those folks either, because they're trying hard.
Yeah, yeah. And, you know, they're excellent people. I don't want to besmirch anybody's, you know, they're excellent people. It's just that I think we named ourselves a solutions task force, and it's been a long time since we've talked about solutions.
Well, if we are able in the future to convene a meeting of interested people, I know that we're going to see you here, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Count on it.
Thank you for letting me speak.
Is there anybody else from the public? I did share, please come forward, Commissioner. Commissioner Newton of the City of Warrenton, I did forward on his email to you guys, I believe, earlier in the week. It wasn't an email, it was a documentation.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I started out to write one page and it turned into 10.
Yeah.
When
No,
I
I
can't
appreciate
sleep,
that.
I'm up at 3:15 or 4 o'clock on the computer going da 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 da. Anyway, I just would like you, please, when everybody uses the term homeless so broad, please don't forget that you've got people living in their
They
cars.
are. You have to scoot closer
I'm sorry.
to it. Yeah.
Please don't forget that you've got people living in their cars. They're as homeless as anybody else. And you've got people that are couch surfing. And I put in the packet that the studies sent to me show the graduation rate for those kids is 40% less than the general public. Their one argument with whoever owns the house where they're living from being homeless living in a tent. That's how close they are. So please don't forget those when you throw this word homeless out, that you're really talking about several different facets in there, because you have the people on the street, you have the car people, and you have the couch surfers. So don't forget that.
That's really useful, thank you.
Well, you have to, and I just want to tell you, I'm not putting the Astoria Task Force down. But it's like they wanted to try to see how to fix it all. You can't. My understanding of this is you fix it one guy at a time is all you can do. And it's very frustrating because 3 arrive while you're fixing one. But that's the best you can do. When you talk about this homeless thing, in Warrenton, I'm sure you saw it in the paper about the bunkhouses for Pacific Coast Seafood. Well, one of the guys, as it turns out, who will probably benefit from that, I'm not talking about Frank Dulcich here, I'm talking about an employee. One of
Just make that clear.
Yeah, so I'll make that clear. One of my friends put a game camera on his property, and he's watching the elk go by, and all of a sudden a guy goes by. What? Next day, a guy goes by. Next day, a guy goes by. So he goes out there. Somebody's working at bioproducts. They can't find a place to live, and that's not too bad a job. He's living in a tree house on my friend's property because the ground's so wet, you can't live on the ground. So he built a tree house with spare lumber. So that guy is homeless, and you will never see him because he was 100 yards back in the woods, up in a tree. Something that I want you to know about, everybody talks about rent control, and the legislature's going to pass a bill this year. There's no doubt about it. I'm the head of the Clatsop County Rental Owners also. We watched Portland with great anticipation or very keenly when they enacted rent control there. And what happened in Portland, our petri dish, was very interesting. The Portland Rental Owners Association, which represents mom and pops that own 1 to 5 houses, about 25 to 35% of their members sold their houses and got out, and it didn't even apply to a bunch of them because if you had one house, it didn't apply, but they didn't care. They went, houses are at the top of the market, I don't want government regulation, get me out. I can put my money somewhere else. As the head of the rental owners, the people that belong to my group, I'm trying to educate them because this bill that's going to be passed, I don't believe is that bad on us. Way better than what could have happened. And so I'm trying to educate them to stop that from happening here in our county. But you're going to see a little uptick from that. And I just want to prepare you. There's nothing you can do to stop it. Because some people are going to, people always go, I don't want government telling me what to do. And you can't stop that. But I commit to you that I am working very hard to try to soften that as much as I possibly can within my members of my rental owners association. Because rental property investing is still a very good avenue to acquire wealth. I figure my return on my investment is about 20% or better. That's a pretty good return. The last thing I'd like to say, I agree with him. Please do not let analysis paralysis stop you from doing something. So many people are so afraid to make a mistake, and I put in my packet, move forward. You're going to make some mistakes, but you'll get something done. If you never move forward because you're so afraid of making a mistake, you won't get anything done. So that's all I have to say for you. Thanks for hearing me.
Thank you, Commissioner.
I appreciate your last comment. I appreciate many of your comments. The aspect of youth, couch surfing, it's a big problem. And that's one of the things that the Human Services Advisory Council in their funding, when they grant monies, that helps prevent future children from being in that situation because they grant to outside agencies that support families, parenting education. They help children to be connected in the community so that they're less likely to be homeless. That is, we can't just look at the crisis of what we do now to stop it, but we have to also look at preventing it in the future.
I forgot one thing.
Okay.
When we talked about bunkhouses in Warrenton, Mr. Dulcich had 2 choices. Now, the attorney came to us and said, if we can't get people to work in this cannery, we're not going to open it. Well, I hate it when attorneys come before you and lie to you. Because if they don't open, they have to give back $3.5 million, and I can't picture Mr. Dulcich giving away $3.5 million. I just can't picture that. But his other option, other than building bunkhouses, he could have gone out and bought apartments and thrown the people out, which would have put more people in cars, some on the street, but many of them couch surfing or living out of their cars. So in our case, building bunkhouses, because we caught a lot of heat for it, but that's the correct, I believe, response to that, so that those people, families, aren't out on the street, because I far don't want families out on the street. I expect other industries to look at that when it plays out in Warrenton, because if I had a hotel that had a lot of employees, I want to know if I could do it. Anybody else? So maybe the county should way off in the distance think about how you would organize bunkhouses for the people that are working. Because if you got a dishwasher, you can't afford one. You got another one over here, you got another one over there, and they're not related to the same guy, but they still need housing just as much as anybody else. Okay, now I'm done.
Thank you.
Can I just say one thing about Commissioner Newton? Nobody does their due diligence like Commissioner Newton. I think with that proposal for the housing, bunkhouses, or whatever you want to call it, I think you called every community in Alaska, didn't you?
Only 8.
Oh, yeah, well, 8.
And I hit gold in Petersburg because they'd had a good cannery with on-site, a good cannery without on-site, and a bad cannery. And when the bad cannery left town, the police chief told me his call volume went down 50%. So that's how critical screening is for the hiring process for bunkhouses.
Well, the community appreciates you doing your homework on that.
I got to earn my money by $69.07.
Yes.
So I'm Rick Bowers, and ditto everything that was said. The only thing that I want to add in, one of the huge things you can do is convene. I mean, that's just a huge thing. Second, trust. When you get into the solutions side, there's a lack of trust on the homeless side. When the folks were getting kicked off the hill in Astoria, the no camping was being widened. I mean, I was around talking to a lot of folks, and I know CCA and Helping Hands and all of the agencies were sitting back there ready to help, but the word on the hill was they can't do anything. So in any of the solutions, you've got to have trust built in. I think I sent the day drop-in center, and that's one of the ideas in there of to co-locate, where the homeless can hang out and be right next to elbow, those social service agencies, and that'll help.
Thank you, Rick.
Thank you, Rick. I found that proposal very inspiring. I did not realize what was going on. And that's such a good example of a group of concerned people getting together and focusing on a real honest-to-God solution.
Well, I do have, I know that I've seen it and I can pull it up, the proclamation from Clackamas County. And that's something that, obviously not February 13th, but February 27th, we can bring a draft before the board for your review and vote.
I think that's great.
I'd also like to add something. I seem to say this a lot. For want of the perfect, the good is lost. I don't think that we do need to know exactly everything that's going to work out perfectly to get something started. This is why I supported having this in the first place. It's going to take a while, and I know it may not be perfect, but I think when government is supportive of something, it's much easier for outside agencies to leverage and gain monies because the government is giving their stamp of approval. Now, a proclamation is, I think that's an excellent suggestion. But I also think some type of funding, even if it's minimal, is useful as well.
So I wonder if Elaine, not to put you on the spot, I know you're not, but how could we leverage funding? And maybe Elaine and Amy can speak to that, permanent supportive housing and other kinds of housing.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you, Commissioner's Attorney. I appreciate Elaine Bruce with Clatsop Community Action. I appreciate Commissioner Sarah for and I appreciate Monica for doing such a great job. Definitely, what we deal with a lot is the matches that are required with state and federal funding that are required, and it's a community-based funding match, which would be great to have that proclamation, to have some teeth with it that we could use for our programs. We're constantly struggling to find community economic matches for our programs. We can't utilize the state and federal funding without the community-based matches. So this would be huge in helping to leverage, as Sarah is saying, for our programs. So I appreciate that very much.
Are you saying that the proclamation alone would do that, or funding?
The proclamation with the funding attached, with the teeth, would be, I mean, it's always nice to have a proclamation, but to have funding attached is always extremely important to have that.
So Elaine, I remember hearing that community volunteer hours helped as well.
Absolutely. That's called in-kind,
So-
and that's used a lot in our submissions to our constant state and federal and local community.
So if you were tracking the community hours, I mean, nobody's ever asked me how many hours I spend, but I could help you. I could help you. And I would love to do that. I would love to see that.
Absolutely. And I recently submitted to the city of Astoria our 6-month interim grant, sort of a report, and we had to, quantify and qualify what we did with the last 6 months of our funding from the city of Astoria. And I appreciate that. That's just absolute accountability. It should be that way. It should be very transparent and accountable. And everything that goes into those match, whether it be an in-kind, whether it be, volunteer match or funding match, those are all important.
Thank you.
I think by being accountable, you're building trust, too.
Absolutely. And with that trust, you demonstrate to the higher levels of funding that you've got that support, and that's exactly what they're looking for. They don't want to fund anything that's not supported at the community level. So that it's extremely powerful to have this kind of a body to support. And it does get reported to the state and federal government. We recently had our Project Homelessness Connect event at the Seaside Convention Center, and Commissioner Quila, his wife, was doing the assessments, and it was great. But that data collection and that whole process is extremely meaningful, and of those types of services that we provide are reportable to the state and federal government. We actually started a new housing program from HUD directly as a response of that event 2 years ago. And that was an identified population that's becoming at risk, which is the homeless youth 18 to 24 years old. And that's a new thing in Clatsop County. And the data that we received from Seaside School District, from Astoria School District, from the Project Homeless Connect, we do a lot of outreach, not just with that particular event, directly coordinated with the money that we got for response. So we have 6 chronically homeless youth in that program right now. So it's pretty cool. So what you guys do here at the community level really has an impact. And I think that's important for people to think about and remember. These things do resonate.
Thank you.
Of course.
Oh, you got one.
Being stared down, I feel it.
Yeah, this is like a church. If somebody gets up, I guess I gotta get up.
Yeah, thanks, Pastor Bill.
But you see nobody sitting in the front pew.
We're afraid they were taking collection.
I see.
Well, I want to echo and thank all of you for working on this issue. It's really important for a lot of reasons. And I concur that I don't think there's going to be one solution. I think there's going to be a lot of little solutions. And I absolutely believe the county has a role to play in that. I think that we're going to need multiple approaches for different populations. I want to say in November, my organization met with the the Housing Authority to talk about potentially going in on a project with them. My concern, obviously, for my population are the most vulnerable folks with serious mental illness, and they're the last people I ever want to see be on the street, in part because having stable housing is so critical to being able to remember to take your medications every day. And for us to know how to find our folks, like, they got to be living somewhere. So, Pastor Bill's right, there's money out there. We just have to get smart about how we write grants for it, how we apply for it. And it's going to be, not one specific population. It's not going to be one approach. It's not going to be one agency. It's going to be multiple agencies, multiple partners. And I think starting by saying this is a problem for our county, because I think when I was first with the task force, maybe a year ago, it was how do we get these people out of here? And how do we not attract more homeless populations? And the reality is we just have to start solving it. And I agree that people end up being homeless for all kinds of reasons. And the important thing is to make sure that we have lots of options regardless of what it is that people need.
Thank you. Yes.
The last two folks reminded me. Clackamas County, they, as a board, decided to focus on one particular project, and it was around veterans, so veterans pods, and who can get mad at veterans? You've got to help them. And what they did was, I think the proclamation was part of it, but they said throughout the county, we're for this. And they even assigned a project manager that we talked to. And I didn't understand all of the details, but she was saying that obviously, that the private sector could do things that the public sector couldn't do and vice versa. But that was that convening that really got that project through. And she named several nonprofits that were involved and some county money. But actually assigning a county project manager to it was the thing that drove it. And I thought that was wonderful.
It's like a seed crystal, isn't it?
Yeah,
Everything can coalesce around that
yeah,
person.
exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Elaine's back.
This is a great night. I just wanted to acknowledge that I know that the Portland area has an issue with the landlords. And unlike that, I think Clatsop County, our private landlords we work with so extremely well. They are our heroes. And I want to commend, Rick Newton, and we work so well with so many private landlords. We don't just work with NOAA and the Public Housing Authority. We have great partnerships with the local landlords, and we develop those case by case, and trust is earned. I think that's an important component that we're extremely proud of, and we're so happy to work with the private sector in that. And they call us when they have an opening. They work with us. They understand the challenges of our population, that a lot of them have maybe poor rental histories or histories of substance abuse, mental health, whatever, but they understand that and they're willing to work with us. And I think that's a huge, huge investment in our community that needs to be acknowledged. And I just want to say how much that's so much appreciated and how much we depend. CCA would not be able to house as many people, I would say maybe a tenth without the local landlord and private property management agencies that we work with. And it's a huge, I think, an unsung hero
So
for our
maybe that could-
community.
Part of our declaration, do you think, is to include that aspect? Because as long as we're praising people and talking about the problem, to point to the, I mean, because that's really wonderful.
They are part of the solution, absolutely.
Cool.
And that thrills us, and we love them, and they love us. And, they're another source that they can call if there's any issues with, the tenants. And it's important because the trust goes two ways, and we develop a relationship with them, and we definitely always follow through with what we say we're going to do. And we don't just throw people in housing. We ensure that they can call us. And but that's a huge community support.
Could you encompass what Commissioner Sullivan is proposing? I mean, because, remember I worked with criminals, so I get real nervous when we talk about putting people in houses with seniors. And so that screening and that vetting and that monitoring and responding when...
Yeah, absolutely. And, I'm a real advocate because, we definitely have a lack of resource with housing inventory. Definitely, we all are aware of that. But, people have a lot of issues. Things happen to people. And I'll tell you what, case management is the glue to navigate and advocate and really provide that mutual understanding between a private landlord and a family in need. And because without that, there's assumptions on both sides. And I think the worst thing you can do is develop camps. The camps of, oh my gosh, they don't want to work, and they're, living on the dole. And you don't have that if you really have a daily or weekly conversation where you really can have a discussion with what things that can happen with people,
So that's something that you do?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a huge part of what makes it all work. So.
And I think when I read online about this particular program, they also have case management. It's a big part.
I saw that, and I appreciate that, Commissioner Sullivan, for saying that to me. They have a screening process, and they have case management, and that really is what makes it all work, because there is protection on both sides. The landlords certainly need protections. The families need protections, and that's great. Everybody needs to be served. But we really, really appreciate the private landlords.
Great.
And we appreciate all the work that you and your agency do too.
Yeah, my wife and I, 100% behind CCA and all you've done, certainly not just for housing, but for food in Clatsop County, so.
Yeah,
appreciate all you do.
it's a good kind of work. So, thank you.
Indeed.
Yeah. Addressing the issue of youth, I know that over the last several years, we have a younger and younger population coming to the food banks. So they're not only homeless, they're hungry. And that's never been seen before, as far as from what I've been told. This is new. Well, maybe during the Depression, if there was such a thing as a food bank, I guess there were food lines. But
We have a Seaside City Councilor here too.
Would you like to come up and speak?
You drove all this way, you might as well come up.
I'm Steve Wright, City Seaside City Council. I would just corroborate everything that's been said so far. City of Seaside, the City Council recognizes we are not experts in this. We don't have the issues as much as everybody else because I think people gravitate towards the bigger cities. And it gets really cold on the beach down there. So, and we do some similar things. We try to recognize that agencies, other agencies like Helping Hands, like CCA, are important to what goes on. And we support them in any way we can, and we try to increase the amount that we give to people, on a regular basis. Although we really do like the follow-up as well, to prove that, these monies are going for good things. So that's kind of all I really have to say. Appreciate you guys looking at this, and, we'll help wherever we can.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's,
I have one more little
oh,
Jeez, Rick.
I'm sorry. Now I'm Rick Newton here with the Clatsop County Rental Owners Association. I changed hats. Just so you understand, when they talk about vacancy rates in 2017, the data given to me was that the vacancy rate in Clatsop County was 0.8%, which means anything that's reasonable is gone in 10 minutes. I try to translate that so people understand. Now it has eased up a little bit, I believe, because I watch everything, house prices, everything. It's a little over 1% now, I believe. Another thing you need to know is that in 2017, the data sent to me, house prices went up 13.4%. That's how I get my 20% return. I was talking to Pam Ackley the other day about, I asked her this in October. I said, Pam, tell me if I'm not right, because I watch house prices all the time. I have to. That's part of my job as the head of CCROA. I said, 6 months ago, the top of the bottom market looked to me like it was 280 to 290,000. I don't know exactly how to define top of the bottom market, but something affordable to a family house was 280, 290, and now it's gone to 300, 310. I said, so those people have lost 20,000 buying power in the last 6 months. And Pam says to me, you're exactly right. So I just wanted you to have that data when you think about these things, because a little more information never hurts. So as the president of the CCRA, thank you.
What frightens me is when we think about the housing bubble from 2007, 2008, is that when housing prices rise higher than incomes,
That's what happened.
is that what makes a bubble? So it's
Well, when I spoke to Helping Hands about how to get Allen's people into rental houses so that they would understand from a rental's perspective, they asked me that very question. I want you to know, in Gearhart, my house in Gearhart went down exactly $0 in 2007. It did not drop a dime, because the people that buy houses in Gearhart typically have money. And so now in Warrenton, I lost maybe $30,000, $40,000, but I'm way on a house, but the houses I have in Warrenton. But I am way up from that now. And so I tell them, if you're going to worry about I told Allen's people, if you're going to worry about the bubble thing, don't go outside because you could get run over. I can't worry about that because I know over history I'm going to come out ahead, and that's why I invest in houses.
Well, and part of what makes the housing prices go up, we were talking with this today, I sat down with the director of Orla to try and get their cooperation to help us solve this. The Oregon Restaurant and Lodging Association. Because it's houses being used for transient occupancy that are now commercial dwellings. So what happens is the valuation of the houses go up all over because they are available for transient occupancy, some of the market. And so that business income inflates the house. So it isn't wages that are inflating house prices, it's business income inflating it from house prices. But Orla said, look, we know it's a problem, and we want to work with you on it. So,
He contacted me.
Good, okay. Because if we've got a coordinated response that takes all these pieces into account, and we have business partners who say, well, we know we've got to work with you because it's everybody's problem. Our people need some place to live so that they can work and we can make money. That's a sensible solution. We're just looking to find it. So I feel really optimistic and grateful tonight going forward that we're looking at it, we're getting such good advice from community members, and regardless of what that survey said, maybe we get a better survey next time, but we started, we're well begun, we know what we have to do, I think, going forward, at least to do a proclamation and to start to look at money and how to leverage it properly, how to look at community hours. I mean, that's a huge source of wealth for every grant I can think of. And so just looking at, what your commissioners are giving and what your volunteer boards are committing, that can help with funding opportunities. So maybe we can gather some of that data too.
And that's huge in this county. It is
Yeah.
so
Oh, yeah, all over.
huge.
Yeah.
The human infrastructure in this county just amazes me.
Well, I'm sorry, but I thought of two more things to worry you about.
My kind of
The-
guy.
We have like less than 15 minutes left.
I'm sorry, these are really quick. The profit on a Airbnb to a rental unit is about 2 to 3 times what they are. I get a solicitation on my Gearhart house once a month to change to Airbnb. I just want you to plant that in the back of your head. The other thing is I've received information that banks are talking about going to 50-year mortgages to try to think, and that's just going to push the prices higher. So I just want you to have those rattling around in the back of your head. Now I'm done.
Nobody
So-
will ever own their house, right?
So what staff would like at this time is kind of a checklist of what the commissioners would like us to work on. And so I do have that we'll be bringing forward a draft proclamation February 27th. I did hand out what was presented back in October just as a kind of a policy. I don't know if you guys want to just take this back with you, look at it. You can scratch all over it and then provide it back to us, and then that way we can take your feedback.
Okay, so
and
this
kind of-
was never
It was never
implemented.
implemented. No, the
Okay.
only thing that ever happened is that it was approved by the board to establish a homelessness fund. At this point in time, we're starting with the budget process, but we don't, so this would be the time to create that fund, but we don't have a way to fund the fund. And so that's kind of why we're wanting to have the conversation. If you're wanting to go a direction of not necessarily having it come from a fund, but having it be a portion of the contributions to outside agencies that you then have kind of like another application process for or something like that, that's the kind of feedback that staff would like to have. So whether it's a fund or whether it's a portion of the contributions to outside agencies.
So
Did you-
I'm really not ready to let go of that outside agency business and the delegation of that. So I would be opposed to that part of it unless we look at how we as a board are going to look at the whole piece of how it fits into the whole budget.
We have established agencies, though, that have proven through data that they are helping a great deal. And
The question isn't whether they're helping.
Well,
The question's the process.
And and they can leverage the money. They leverage it. Sometimes they can double, triple, quadruple it. I absolutely feel very confident that that is an avenue we should go with. How we fund it, I think personally, yes, foreclosed properties when there is monies. And then I think, I don't know if a bond, I'm not ready to go there.
I think, yeah, if we were to do something like that, then we would need to have a separate
Yeah.
fund for that.
And I think, I know there's been objections to the increase or the reestablishment of the funding that was, the county commission has given to these outside agencies, which was $30,000 prior to the downturn in the economy. And it took years for the county to finally decide, yeah, that money is well spent, and so it was reestablished to $30,000. But it's been a number of years now, and things, have gone up. So I think we should consider increasing that somewhat, and a portion of that go towards agencies that do help with the homeless. I mean, we've got some good agencies, really good ones, that are very skilled and knowledgeable and professional. So that's where I see us going.
I would just ask if the board is going to go forward with the homeless fund that it established last July and actually put money in there, there needs to be some sort of governing policy on how that
Absolutely.
And, yeah.
Absolutely.
Which is why that was written, to just start some conversation on what do you want for policy, because you can't just have staff in charge of
Right.
deciding where things are going to go.
That's
So,
why- yeah.
From a legal perspective, I
Right.
would just ask that if you decide to put money in the fund, you have a policy governing that money.
Okay, so
That sounds.
granting it
legal.
to outside agencies that deal with homelessness, is that a way? Is that a possibility?
Well, you already have a fund.
You can do that now.
You know, you already have a funding for that. So if you're going to establish a separate homeless fund and put money in it, then we need a policy for governing what you do with those funds. I mean, I suppose one of the things you could say is you're going to give it to outside agencies in the policy, but it just, there needs to be
Yeah,
a
right.
policy.
Like if you're going to use the foreclosed land sales, currently foreclosed land sales go into the general fund discretionary revenue. And so if you were wanting to dedicate those monies, then you're going to want to have a separate fund. If you're
Yes, I
wanting to make
understand
sure,
that.
yeah. And so from staff's perspective, if you guys want to take this back, we have our homework and you guys have your homework.
Okay.
Then we can all kind of, work
That
towards
sounds good.
taking these little steps to trying to come to a resolution.
And these are steps, right? We're not going to solve all this right now.
Commissioner Webb, you've written a bazillion policies in your time, and just, let me know what we can do to, it's just taking a stab at it.
No.
To give somebody something to work with.
I absolutely appreciate that was part of my opposition to this in the first place, was I just didn't feel it was based in something that was defensible. And it's just really cool if we could, I'm so disappointed that $97,000.
Yeah, well, them's the rules.
You can always ask the other passing districts to join us in our fund. I heard the city of Seaside would like to help us in any way they can.
She's good at hearing things like that. Yeah, we can get.
Very good.
That's
excellent.
Somebody write that down.
Unfortunately, I appreciate the turnout of everybody else, but unfortunately, there is no newspaper representation here
Right.
tonight, and so,
Yeah.
well.
But
Okay.
one of the things too that I'd like to confirm, one of the many, 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 many lessons I'm learning in county college, we had an excellent presentation by someone who talked about the fact that one of the greatest powers that counties in Oregon have is the power to convene. And I really appreciate hearing that word here tonight.
Yep, good.
Do you want staff to look at suggestions on some sort of organizing some committee or?
I'd like to, I hate to ever ask the staff to do any more than they do, but I'd like, there's this Clackamas issue I keep hearing about. Could we do a little research into?
Martha Schrader has said that she will come here if we ask her to. She's the Clackamas County Commissioner. She's president of AOC.
Right.
And her initiative as a president of AOC is housing. She convened the Housing Committee last Friday.
Right.
She's very interested in this. I don't know what kind of constraints she has on her time, but she will help you any way she can. And better than that, I have her assistant Emily's phone number, because that's the one you really
Well,
want.
it's just that, to me, it's always worth doing a little research to see.
Are there any laws up in the legislature pending concerning housing? I know the state is looking at housing.
Bunches of them.
Yes.
So maybe we can get a report. You're on the legislative committee, aren't you,
Yeah,
Commissioner
well,
Thompson?
Well, doesn't everybody get the same package that I get monthly? Don't you all get a package from AOC every month?
Legislative update.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We also have Betsy Johnson that we're going to be able to talk to, so we can.
February 11th at noon. One thing that she did convey is that, her new position with the Ways and Means Committees, she's not as in the weeds with all the bills that are coming through. So if there is something specific that you are wanting to know more about, if we could give her a heads up. I sent the one email to all of you. So if there's anything else that you're wanting to think about, then that way she can kind of delve into that, get a little bit more information on it for you. So then when we talk to her on the 11th, if you have questions, she's not
So
ill
basically,
prepared.
what her stance has been in the past, do your homework, tell me what you want me to do, don't ask me to tell you what to do.
Yeah.
And
Work
usually,
it that way.
yeah,
So
and-
if we do our homework.
And usually when we have talked to her in the past, she's telling us what's going on at the legislature, but.
But this time around, she's not going to be able to tell you as much about the individual bills, so that's why if there's something specific that you're wanting to know about.
How about this?
Yeah,
What the
there-
legislature is
there's,
considering
kind
for-
of what they're considering.
But there are 4,000 bills they
Yeah.
expect to come through this year, 4,000. So,
But AOC tracks those kind of by subject, and
so
so
that's
it is
the-
possible to.
That's the governance committee. That's why I bring back the information from the governance committee. If you're interested, I am happy to share my notes from the governance committee. It's 8 a.m. in Salem on Monday morning, if anybody else wants to show up too. So that's the place to look at stuff, and if you have concerns, I can take them through that. But it's for the whole state. And so there'll be, this is why some counties pay lobbying firms to do this, because this is an important function to be able to know what a county should do.
I'm wondering if, this may or may not be the right place to ask it, but I was thinking about the conference calls that we have set up. Would it be, I know it's a limited period of time, but would it be okay to open it up to other elected officials in the county if they wanted to listen in on the conversation? That way, they can talk to other folks at the same time, because I know they're very busy with the legislative session right now.
Especially
And
as
it's a
co-chairs.
conference call, so.
It has been done in the past.
If we were to invite, like our,
Doesn't Senator Johnson set up groups she's inviting to listen in?
Yeah.
So maybe you want to ask her what she likes.
Yeah,
Okay.
in this particular instance, we set it up with just us, didn't we?
Right.
Yeah, but she does, in the past, when we've set them up, it has been with like the school districts, the cities, other districts as well.
because not
This
everybody's
call
going to
is-
be able to call in at the same time, but the people that might have a question, they would have one more option to have their questions heard.
One of the things I think is inherent upon us is to do our homework. I have gone through several streams in the AOC packages, and I had intended to go on Monday and Tuesday, but I just can't.
But would this be okay to open this up, to answer my question?
Well,
Would
I
that be
think,
okay to-
that's her call, and that's.
Oh, so what you're saying
Yeah.
is it's Betsy's call?
Yeah,
Okay.
and so, that's something that you can talk to her about. The downfall to that might be, we're only getting a very
Right.
small slice of her time, and
Yeah.
so if you
So
open
you're
it
gonna
up.
give it away?
Not
Yeah,
to be selfish, but
No, I
it's
just,
nice
it's
to be
ours.
able
It's
to
just
Yeah.
an idea. I was
Yeah.
wondering what you all were thinking.
And
so.
oftentimes, if there is something of particular importance, she'll have that person there, and so there'll be opportunities for others to
Yeah.
participate.
So if we had a focus on housing, I think that'd be dandy. Because she says she's a great fan of Margaret Salazar and Oregon Housing and Community Services, and if she can tell us how we can support our
Yeah.
local housing effort, if that's the focus of our first telephone call with her, I think that'd be great.
Yeah, I agree, but I think it also has to be on homelessness as well. Housing is, we have to have housing because homeless people are houseless. But it's a broader issue because there's mental health.
So,
part of
so
wraparound
are there some
services.
specific bills that you're aware of that we should give her a heads up about, or do you just want to ask her what's going on with
The
the
11th, the
Yes.
housing?
11th is.
Monday.
Monday.
Yeah.
The ones that I've sent her so far are the ones that I sent you guys, which were some of the ones that just staff have concerns about or just kind of curious about.
Did you send us a memo?
I sent an email
When was that?
earlier.
got it.
this-
About Janice and all
Yeah,
those other ones.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I send it to your
Good.
county email. Yeah, so, but like the Janice one, and then I know that the sheriff's office, understands the concerns about what happened in the Columbia County Jail, but they also have concerns about not being able to, in certain instances, be able to use dogs. So there's just some, I know that Suzanne has some concerns about the staffing model for the new bill regarding property taxes. So, yeah.
Right.
So those were the ones that I was aware of. So if you have some other ones that you want to send on to her or send on to me, then we can kind of give her staff a
And you'll
heads
be
up.
on the call, right? You'll be part
Yeah.
of this.
Maybe it is too early for her to have a sense of what bills may or may not make it, but. if
She kind of has a sense on some, because she's already told me, yeah, that's.
Right. So if she does, I'd be very interested in hearing about housing and homelessness, mental health, but perhaps she could keep that in her notes that this would be ongoing.
Cap and
To
trade.
keep us
It's always cap and trade.
informed.
This
There
is
was
a
something that just came through on that.
side issue, but I had talked to Monica before, and I've talked to Carrie Borgen of the Daily A. There's a part of their newspaper where they cover Salem. It's one of the last papers that is currently covering Salem, and I'm trying to get a price out of them of what would it take to have, if there's an institutional cost where the department heads and the commissioners would have access to that particular Salem Reporter newspaper, so they can also keep track of what's happening under the legislature in that way, too.
What was her response to that?
She thinks it's a good idea, but the 3 or 4 times that I've talked to them all, I haven't quite nailed down any kind of answer, so I'm just keeping working on it, but just to put it out there.
Good idea.
Well, thank you all for your time. I appreciate everyone who came tonight.
Yes, thank you.